So greetings, friends and followers. This is Nurses Talking. I am Dale Barzy. And as always, if you like what you see and hear, subscribe, leave us a comment, and let us know what you think. Here on Nurses Talking, we speak to nurses anywhere in the world and at any stage in their nursing journey. And today, I am very, very pleased to welcome Erin Ellsworth out of Arizona. Erin brings 21 years of experience as a registered nurse and over 8 years as a legal nurse consultant. And she said she started as a bedside nurse in the neonatal ICU, pediatric ICU, and various pediatric specialties. And there she dedicated about 17 years to bedside caring for others. And then she got engaged and planning a family. And she knew she wanted a career that would grow with her. And that's when she discovered legal nurse consulting. And she says it wasn't after becoming a mother that she fully embraced the legal nurse consulting space. And now she mentors nurses who want to break into legal nurse consulting and transition out of bedside nursing. So welcome, 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 Erin.
Thank you so much for having me, Dale.
My absolute pleasure. My absolute pleasure. Why What made you become a nurse?
This is kind of a funny story. So when I was younger, when I was 15, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease.
Okay.
And back then you just didn't know much about it. And you certainly did not see kids with it.
Mhm.
I lived in Mississippi and there was only one pediatric gastroenterologist there. And so I had to see a mix of a adult and pediatric. And so that was something that I thought that I wanted to go to medical school for. I was like, there's only one pediatric gastroenterologist. That means there's a need for it. And I really wanted to help other kids that were experiencing what I was experiencing because it took them a while to really figure out what it was. um, so that was kind of my plan. And I started college. And as any college student probably knows, it takes a little bit of discipline to get yourself going whenever you're living on your own and you got to
Mhm.
take yourself to class. And I had a lot of fun my freshman year of college. And so I had to kind of rethink what I was going to do. And I was having a really bad Crohn's episode. And my doctor was like, you really probably likely don't need the stress of going to medical school.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I thought, well, maybe I'll go to physical therapy. So I started taking classes towards kinesiology. And then my sister, she had always wanted to go to nursing school. And so she really talked me into it. She knew that I loved kids and I wanted to do pediatrics. And she was like, why don't we go to nursing school together? She was 7 years older than me and she had children very young. And so she was going to school later, which ended up being around the
Yeah.
time that I was going to school. And that's why we went together. And so she really talked me into it. At first, I was a little hesitant. Like, I don't want to take care of adults. I really want to take care of kids. And I wasn't thinking about being a nurse in the pediatric hospital. I don't know why that didn't come across to me, but she was like, once you get out of school, then you can take care of kids and you can do whatever you want. And you can go to MP school if you want, because that was really her plan. And so we decided to go to nursing school together. And it was like the best decision ever.
Yes. Yes. I can imagine just going with your sister, first of all.
Yeah. We rode to class together every single day for 2 years.
Awesome. 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 But here's the thing. You wanted to be a doctor. Your physical condition kind of put that behind on the back burner. And then you had to be talked into going to nursing school. So how did it challenge you?
I think just really figuring out how to like what nursing was about because I don't think I really realized that nursing is really the heart of being at the bedside and you're really the advocate for the patient and the doctor is very I don't want to say hands off, but nursing is more hands on. So I think that it was better for me, and it all worked out like it was supposed to, because I think that is really what I wanted, but I didn't realize, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I think many of us go into it not realizing just how autonomous we are or how our role really differs. While it complements and is part of the team, really differs from other members of the team.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So pediatrics was your love, and you did that for like 17 years.
I did. I started out on a pediatric floor because I did an externship the summer before my last semester of nursing school there. And so
Mhm.
I took on that job, and within 9 months, I started travel nursing. And travel nursing is a whole different beast. As
Yes.
far as adaptability, you really have to be able to adapt to what's going on and not fight the process, because, as we all know, it's always done differently. Um,
Yes.
right down to how medications are prepped and what their policy is on giving them. And if you can't adapt to that, like I always told people, travel nursing is not for you. So I think even doing it like earlier in my career, I think that just made me a better nurse, but it also made me hungry for variety. And so I can remember, I think it was my third travel assignment at UCLA, and you only get 3 days of orientation, right? And so I was
Mhm.
orienting to the pediatric floor, and I remember them saying on my third day of orientation, through those doors right there is the pediatric ICU. You might not, you might just get a patient like that's coming out or whatever. And we were like, okay. And that was like our orientation. The next night, I come to work on my own. You're being floated to the PICU. And I'm like, what? So they literally threw me in there, and that was like where my love for the ICU came from. I fell in love with it from that minute on, and just getting exposure like that was amazing, and I think it really shaped my nursing career.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, and you said they just threw you in.
They did. I will tell you, my friend and I, we were both thrown in there, and thank goodness they put us beside each other, like to figure out what we were doing. But when we left walking to the bus stop the next morning, we were like, do we still have our nursing license? Like, what just happened in there?
That happens to so many of us so often. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
But what do you, so now you've been a nurse for like 21 years.
Hmm.
What do you think you would like to see change?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So this is a big one. So I think in the beginning of my career, which I think a lot of nurses don't even realize, that it used to be about loyalty to your employees, and it used to be about the patients. And I really feel like it was probably around when I had my or right before I had my first baby, like 2016, 2017, is when they started changing these models and making it about business. And it was basically like your experience didn't matter. I watched so many seasoned nurses, like older seasoned nurses, close to retirement, being pushed out of the pediatric PACU, and they were there and started it like when it started. And it was so sad to see. And I think it's just gotten worse on that end, on a business
Hmm.
model. So
Hmm.
I really wish that they would go back to putting it patient care and loyalty to employees first rather than money, honestly.
Oh.
I know that's
That's a
a big
tectonic
topic.
shift.
Yeah, a big topic, but that is ultimately, like, most nurses now that are in the hospital never experienced that when it was about patient care, and when it was about being loyal, like, to your unit and having
Mhm.
the experience. Like, I traveled for 8 years, and I just really wanted to build my resume so that I could get any job I wanted to, and to know that I had all that experience to do anything I wanted to.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
it just felt like your experience didn't
That
matter.
was just mhm.
They just
Mhm.
wanted like the brand new nurse that they can shape, that does not know anything else different, and that they can pay less, you know? And it just, I don't know, it's very sad. Very sad.
So were you always attracted to the legal aspect of it though?
I wouldn't say necessarily, but I think in my last probably 5 years at the bedside, really fighting to advocate for patients and seeing what was going on and how doctors were, really doing their practice because of this model. I
Mhm,
think that
mhm.
is really what drove it home for me.
Yeah, yeah. And so you became an entrepreneur. You started your own place, Ford Consulting. Good for you. But what were the hurdles? Because now you're coming from a kind of you know uh, regimented kind of atmosphere, right? To being your own boss. So A, what were the hurdles? And B, what skills translated and helped you?
So, you know what is crazy is that I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. My parents were both entrepreneurs, and I watched how they, the woes and the lows, and how they struggled and didn't sleep at night because they were worried about the business. And I really never wanted that. And I think when I originally went into legal nurse consulting, it was to have a little bit of a supplement and see if it could actually work for flexibility of time. Um, I saw that there could be flexibility of time with being here for my family. And so that was really what drew me to it. But I don't think that I realized once you're working for yourself that you have to be disciplined and you have to push out all the distractions. I mean, sitting here right now, there's two loads of laundry that need to be folded. If you're working at your desk and you see that as a mom, like you're thinking about that. And so those are skills that you really have to figure out. I think that was the biggest thing, was discipline in myself and making sure that I had boundaries with my work hours. I still struggle with that now, to say, okay, I'm going to cut this off at this time. So I think those are two big hurdles whenever you're working from home, because you don't realize, that you think it's going to be easy, but it really isn't. And it really is a learning curve, you
It
know.
is.
But I do think that being an ICU nurse and being organized has really helped me, because I was one of those ICU nurses that everything was labeled and it looked all pretty and everything was stocked before I left for the next shift. So I think the organization key of having that experience in the hospital has really helped me to thrive in working at home and being an entrepreneur.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you said something just now that made me smile because you talked about boundaries, about setting boundaries. And the thing about working from home is that very often people who love you dearly, honestly, um, forget that this is a job for you and that you're doing it. And they would say, "Oh, can you do such and such for me?" No, I am working.
Exactly. Exactly. And I'm like trying to stick to certain times, and I'm like, no, I don't have 5 minutes. I need to finish this while I'm
Yeah,
doing that. It's really hard, and it is an adjustment for the entire family.
it is. It is. They have to get, and it was probably easier for you to get to that space than for them to get to that space with you.
Yes. Yes.
Hmm.
I ended up, one thing I would not recommend, but what we ended up doing was, our office does not have doors on it. It's just open. And so we ended up in 2020, when I went full time from home, moving our desk into our bedroom, because I needed a locked door and I needed to be away from the space where my kids were. And I don't recommend putting your office in your bedroom, because that's a whole nother thing. But to have a locked door is a good boundary. And I hired somebody to come in and be with them, for the time that I was working. So I still got, if I needed to get up and go out and check on them for any reason, and
Yeah.
I knew they were safe in there, but I had my boundary of the door being locked.
Yeah.
Now I just work while they're at school. So we've moved the office out of the bedroom, which is a great thing. But yeah, that's how I keep it now.
Yeah. So now you mentor nurses who want to get into that space. What do you tell them? What advice do you give them?
Um, Most of them, I would say majority of my clients are moms looking to have that flexibility of time.
Mhm.
Whenever you become a mom, you don't realize that whenever you're working 12 hours and you have an hour commute because of traffic one way, that means you're gone for 14 hours, right? So
Yes.
if you have your kid on any type of routine schedule with sleeping, you're going to miss them. You're not going to see them all day. And I think a lot of people who come to me want that flexibility of time. It's just my husband and I know that one thing we struggled with was when our son was sick. Who was going to stay home with them, who was going to call out of work, and typically it falls on the mom. And it's
Yeah.
really, you feel guilty for leaving your coworkers short. You feel guilty for not being there for your family. It really is hard. So the flexibility of time, I feel like most people are coming to me for that. And I always tell them this is not a fast game. This is not going to happen overnight. You can't apply for something and leave your job today. It's going to take some work, but in the end, it will be worth it. I always suggest that they stay at their current job now to continue getting that experience while they're building this business, just like I did. And I let them know, like, the very first thing I say, because a lot of people want it right now.
Yeah.
They need it now and they want it right now. And I'm like, I understand that you need it, but it is not going to happen overnight. And I'm just going to be upfront and honest with you. If you're looking for something that is going to happen overnight, you need to apply for jobs with companies. If you need something that is consistent pay with a check and somebody
Yeah.
else taking your taxes out, this is not
This is
it.
not it. This is not it.
It's not about, whenever I'm mentoring them, it's not about just pulling any nurse in. Like, I like to talk to them first and make sure that they understand what the trials and tribulations are of this career,
Yeah.
first before they start to invest in it. Because
Yeah.
if you invest in it and then you learn all this other stuff, you kind of feel duped.
Yes. And the other thing is, as you were talking, it occurs to me, the other thing is that very often when people do something like that, they are doing it because they are at the stage where they're feeling, I can't do what I'm doing anymore. And
Hmm.
so their thought processes are not really clear,
Yes. Yes,
you know?
exactly. Exactly. And some people what they'll do is I'll see them go and they'll get a remote nursing job. So that fulfills that part right
Mhm.
now. And
Yeah.
then they still are interested in the legal nursing because they want more
I want more.
flexibility after
Yeah.
they got home. And so I think that's a different route that some people choose to take. And I think that's okay. So you
Yeah.
settled your right now feeling of what you need, and
Yes.
now you're
Right.
continuing to build for the future. And that's
Yeah.
really what it is. It's building for the future.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is one of the things that, in my view, kind of, it's like perhaps maybe missing a little bit from nursing education. I just believe that I realize that there's a lot of information crammed into the time, but I really believe that somewhere we should be able to find a little space to get nursing students used to the idea of how broad nursing is, and that when you step out from nursing school into a job, you should still have the feeling of, I want to know what else is there. Not necessarily that you're going to move from where you are, but just to broaden that horizon so that when you really do want to move, Or maybe your horizon tells you, no, where you are is fine. When you really do want to move, it's a little easier path, I think, or a little smoother path. You have a better idea of what you might want to do and what it might entail for you.
Yeah, and I think people don't realize what the options are out there. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of them think the path is, RN, and then you have to go to MP school to actually advance. And that's
Mhm.
just not the case. Like I thought that I wanted to do either pediatric or neonatal nurse practitioner. And that was always in the back of my head. And I remember being in San Francisco. I was on my very last travel assignment and I was thinking about going staff at that hospital at UCSF and going to school there for my nurse practitioner. And that 3 months really changed the course of my life because there was a new mom who was a nurse practitioner who had come back to our unit and was working per diem. And she said, she went to nurse practitioner school because she thought it was going to give her more flexibility of time and the hours were going to be better. And once she got into it, it was very difficult to find a job in the pediatric realm.
Hmm.
And then we were in San Francisco and she lived in San Francisco, and the only place she could find a job was in Oakland. So that meant adding a commute.
A commute.
And then she said it ended up being, that the doctors really, I don't want to say dumped everything on her, but her part of her responsibility was she always had the call, which
Yeah.
is kind of what the doctors are doing in order to make it better for
For
them, which
them.
is
Hmm.
which is fine, that's how it works. But I think that when some people go into it, they don't realize all of those things are coming with it. So it's really, and sometimes she said as well, the pay wasn't as good. Now, it's kind of hard to say that because San Francisco pay for a per diem nurse is
Pretty
pretty
good.
good. I stayed out there for 3 years, working two jobs for that. And so that is really, really hard to beat. So I know in some areas that portion is different, but I think you should really look at the whole thing, like all of your options in nursing before you think that has to be the next option.
Yeah. 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 And sometimes we have to remember that good pay comes with its downside too. In her case, it came with commute, it came with, having to always take call, it came with
Yeah, and they're not all like that, but I
no.
did see several more after that were,
Hmm.
and it was enough for me to know I don't want that, you
Yeah.
know. And you really
Yeah.
have to decide, is that right for you?
What's for you?
Mm.
Exactly. Exactly. So we're talking a lot these days about, particularly after the pandemic, we're talking about nurse burnout and people moving on and stuff like that, and self-care, which, we hadn't been talking about for a long, long time. So, first of all, what does self-care mean to you? And what do you do to take care of you?
Well, self-care to me is having some quiet time, which I never thought I would love the quiet time until becoming a mom. Um, I have early riser kids, particularly my son. So he gets up between 4 and 5 a.m. every day. So one thing that is self-care to me that I like is to get up before him if that's possible. Sometimes
Mhm.
he beats me to the punch. But I try to get up. I set my alarm for 4:30 every morning. And whether I do a workout, which helps me just focus and be in a better mental space, helps me have more patience. Whether I do that or I just take a few minutes to get myself ready for the day, that is really like self-care for me. When I don't start my mornings like that, it seems to be more chaotic and it takes me a while to sort of get my grounding.
Mhm.
And then just it's really hard as a mom and a nurse doing things for yourself. So I try to pick something for myself at least once a month, whether it's like a facial or a massage or something like that. That's like an extended of my self-care, but daily it's like having that morning time, just even if it's like 15 minutes that is what really helps me every day.
I get that. I get that because that's there's stuff that I like to do for my own self-care. One of it is just some of it is just being outside. I love being outside. I love walking outside. I love to garden and stuff like that. But more importantly, my daily thing is that when I get up in the morning, I do get up before others in the house and just sit with a cup of tea. And if I can sit with a cup of tea for 15 minutes, I am good for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
I am settled. If I don't have my morning tea, I recognize that I'm a little bit grumpy,
I know. If I wake up after him, like a lot of time after him, like even 5:15, I feel like I'm behind and it just becomes
Yeah, right.
chaotic. And you get them off to school and then you're like, okay, how do I get my day back together,
Yeah, yeah. The things that would normally flow, the sequence that would normally flow just doesn't if you don't start it right, or at least I don't. I have
Yeah,
one last question. I've been asking people what they would say in one word is the most essential quality of a nurse. What would you say? What would that word be?
it is so hard. I think the biggest thing for me would be you have to be passionate.
Passionate.
Nurses
Mm.
are passionate. If you're not passionate about your care for patients, why are you a nurse? Why are you a nurse? I think passion is what took me in all of my realms of nursing, just being passionate about learning and being passionate about being an advocate for the patient and doing what's right and, seeing the outcomes whenever they leave the ICU and go to the floor, you've done your job. Just,
You've done
I
it.
was just
Mm.
passionate about all of that because I loved it so much, just helping and being able to make it better for somebody else.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That resonates. That resonates. Erin, thank you so, so much for this conversation. I've truly enjoyed it.
Yes, it was so
It's been a pleasure
fun.
talking to you.
Thank you for having me.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you.